This is a weekly wrap up presented by the Conversation Project, and I am Jay Cleveland Payne. This is simply the wrap up of news stories we posted all week on the Conversation Project's feeds on Facebook and Twitter or X. And we talk about most of these stories throughout the week in our daily videocast podcast, which we do it every single weekday. We call that Things You Might Not Have Heard. Now, for Things You Might Not Have Heard, this is a start to the day that gives you some news ideas and news stories that you vet to tell us as popular. But they are dealt with a little bit of curation. We take top stories from the previous day and give them in the right order, I believe, to make things a good narrative. Some of them aren't really as big as we think they are. This one, it's all about you. For this podcast, it's straight the stats. You tell us what stories based on your engagement all week long, your pure engagement score, presenting the data by you to give us the top 10 stories that drive the actual week's worth of stories. So no play, no interjections by me. These top 10 stories are literally the top 10 by the number stories you chose this week. We also give you some perspective by giving you some stories that were not quite there, almost ran, story 11 through 15, that aren't quite in the top 10, but most of these we actually did talk about because they're high enough in the week. Well, interesting thing about this week, there's a lot of stories we did not do because they seem like they were just sort of outliers, but there's a lot of big stories here we didn't get into that you apparently liked a lot more than I thought, so we should have talked about them in the daily show. We talk about one story here at the very end of the show that no one wanted to talk about. Most times it's something that's a bit more important than it should be by the rankings, but just gets missed out by being posted like at 2:30 in the morning or something like that. We call that the almost relevant story of the week. We will get to that one at the end of the show to tell you about what story you guys didn't put much love into and maybe give some love to it. We'll give some love to it, maybe give them some perspective to something that might be more important. This one may be on the lesser important end as some, but we'll let you discuss that at the very end. We'll explain how the feeds work in various spots inside of this headline. Plus, we'll talk about another offering we have, the story of the week, which is built out off of this podcast. We'll take one of the top 10 stories and expound on that in another deeper podcast. You can find details on all of those things at our website. This is theconversationproject.com, and email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com for more details, or to tell us more details. Tell us more we can do to make things work better for the whole shebang. Now that we spent all that time explaining that, let's get into the news, shall we? The countdown begins now for the week ending November 18th, 2023. Stories going from 10 to 1 per your engagement. The top stories for this week. Starting off with headline number 1, which is headline number 10 in the rankings. Man arrested following death of former NHL player Adam Johnson. An arrest was made in the death of Adam Johnson, who died about a week ago or so after being cut in the neck by a skate during a game against the Sheffield Steelers, a minor league-ish game. Former NFL big-time player Adam Johnson's out there still playing the game, still young and still able to do it, but because of the way it happened, known as a freak accident when we talked about it, there was suspicion going on there, and the man was arrested for manslaughter, released on bail with the investigation continuing. We will go deeper into the story as it continues because it's not just a one-off, obviously, because he died in the match. He died during the game, and then of course they brought up charges against one man. We'll learn more details about the man, the incident, how things played out later on as the trial continues and the investigation continues. But this is one that was a very sad one that we did put into the stories this week because it was an update that people really want to know what happened to Mr. Johnson. At number 9, believe it or not, there are people running for president on the Democratic side that aren't named Joe Biden. Actually, there's two prominent ones. One's been here the whole time, and she's still here. Best-selling spiritual author Marianne Williamson presses on against all odds presidential run. She's not dropping out of the race. This is her second time doing this. Last time she was in the big Wu-Tang Clan-like forum that had President Biden come up as the front runner after some folks started to, do some horse trading behind the scenes or the young guns. This time, Marianne Williamson, not a young guns, thinking she can be the next president for the United States, the next Democratic president of the United States, the first woman president for the United States, and thinks she has what it takes to go on. Now, without the whole actions of other people in the process of trying to run on that ticket, it's harder to get some space because the primary is essentially won by the incumbent just by default, although he's being primaried by her and someone else. Also, there was RFK Jr., but we'll talk about him a little bit later. Here, it's just her, and she's still trying to make things happen. If you're pulling for her, that's cool. I have been on record saying that when originally it was Marianne Williamson and then Robert K. Jr., right, Robert Kennedy Jr. F. Kennedy Jr. came into the race. The fact that those two people were running for president for the Democrats, they were both, I consider, insane people, but I'd vote for them in a heartbeat over Joe Biden because Joe Biden is Joe Biden, and that's something I feel. We'll see what happens as things pan out and as they are actually put out into actual prominent people. Myself personally, Marianne Williamson will not necessarily make a better president than Joe Biden, but I just really don't want to vote for Joe Biden. May not have a choice. Let's move on to the number 8 story for this week by the numbers. The headline for the story reads like this. Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Jaden McDaniels ejected after Warriors Timberwolves, Freudian slip there, scuffle. Posted that one on Wednesday, coming out of that game. So a big game happened this week between the Warriors and the Timberwolves, and from that there was a big old fight. What happened? Essentially, McDaniels and Thompson got into kind of a scuffle, got tangled up into themselves inside of the matchup, if you will, being a bit dramatic, a bit emotional, got a bit heated. McDaniels ripped Thompson's jersey when Thompson tried to drag McDaniels to the ground in the process. And so when your boy starts getting beat up, you go and help out your boy. That's when Draymond Green stepped in, get involved, put Rudy Gobert into a headlock in the process. All 3 players were basically ejected. It was all sort of crazy. I think the Warriors won the game, but it was a fight. That's what everybody basically remembers from the actual matchup. At number 7 this week, I told you Donald Trump would be here, but not exactly you expected. This is a big story that we did report, and it was hard to kind of read and just hard to kind of unravel. But bear with me. I'm going to read the Daily Mail's very long, very detailed headline from this, and then essentially back away because it explains all of it. Donald Trump receives a double bird from comedian Bill Burr's wife at UFC 295 alongside Kid Rock and Tucker Carlson as they watch Alex Pereira and Tom Aspinall secure big wins at MSG. Bottom line is, UFC 295 happened last weekend. Donald Trump was there because he goes to the big fights. He loves the fight. He loves the fight game, if you will. He was there with Kid Rock and Tucker Carlson, who apparently love the fight game and love being around famous people and seeing as being famous and powerful. Bill Burr was there. He did a show, I believe, that night there in New York City, and then came out to watch the fight, or did the show that weekend or something like that. He was there in the area. He was there with his wife. His wife loves the fight game. Wife loves to fight. Wife loves to be around the famous people, I guess, as well. As Donald Trump stepped in, Bill Burr dropped the double bird on Mr. Trump, President Trump, former President Trump, that guy Trump. And, the crowd did what it is. Now, the crowd goes wild at these things, and it's a little bit of a weirdness because these are, I want to say Trump's people, but these are the kind of folks that are the sort of red meat kind of MAGA Republican guys that Donald Trump would sort of basically go on to because whiny blue liberals don't really like punching people in the face. Bill Burr is an interesting comedian because he's an equal opportunity offender. Basically, you go to a show and if you're not pissed off by something he said, then you weren't paying to the right show because he basically blasts every single person in the room. And that's what he does. And that's why people love him, especially the red side loves him because he bashes the blues even while he's bashing the reds. Donald Trump, in this case, did very little but show up to a fight, got some attention, got some yays, got some boos as well, and just watched a good fight that night. Pretty good night, apparently, for the actual fights on the card that evening. Let's move on to the next story at number 6. This is one we put a lot of heart and soul and grief into because it happened, and it's kind of interesting how it happened. The headline reads that we posted, The Marvels is coming in around $47 million for opening weekend, worst MCU opening ever. And this is beyond, Captain Marvel and the previous last big release that was not very good as well, which was Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. That didn't do very well, and that's mostly because a lot of people are kind of getting tired of it. In fact, a lot of the actual new commentary that came out in the latter part of the week is the fact that the Marvel movies are failing because the audience that watched the original ones, the first Iron Man, 80 years ago, are now 80 years older. If you're watching at the beginning of the hype of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then you watch the downfall of the DC Cinematic Universe because it didn't quite pull off, you'll understand that having to watch every single movie because it's a plot twist to the next movie gets a little tedious. So you can't watch it in its own. You can't watch a group of movies that's one character because it falls on character. it actually jumps across too many other shows. What happened with this one in the Marvels is the fact that there's hatred towards Brie Larson and sort of the chick flickishness of the Brie Larson movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Number one. Number two, the overhype of some of these movies because some of them aren't very great. I saw it with my family. We actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was funny. It was light. It was something different, but it wasn't the epic that it wasn't an Avengers movie, a big epic movie you had to go see. This was one that I saw, and I'm happy I saw it. But it also played some parts to build up to other movies because I'm a sucker like that. 47 million in the domestic box office. It actually earned about 63 million in China, but the problem is it needs to make about 650 million to actually break even on just the marketing alone. We'll see what happens on this one. Will it make its money up? Where? Probably not, but it is a spoiler, slight spoiler, a bit of a build up for what's coming next because they all are. And the closing, the end credit scene allows for a sort of a intro into what may be happening in Deadpool and what's probably happening in the new Avengers movies with Secret Wars or the Kang Dynasty. It brings some clues to that. Other than the clues, it was a pretty good movie, I believe. But the hatred for the Brie Larson movies and just the tiredness of the format may be showing its life, which is why Frozen 4 is apparently coming. Number 5, Donald Trump Jr. returns to witness stand as New York fraud trial enters new phase. Donald Trump actually also testified this week, but on Monday, Donald Trump Jr. took the stand for the defense to talk about their trial in New York over the Trump company, the Trump organization, the Trump actual business that runs the business that pays the Trumps to be billionaires. The big problem is this was the defense taking a chance to have Donald Trump Jr. fix what he said about this stuff when the prosecution was up. Basically, all he said was his father was a genius and we all should just bask in his glory because there's so many eyesores that were in New York City and he turned them to jewels and he had vision towards many projects to make things big. One little side note, I worked with a guy who worked in radio, who worked in New York during the time when Trump was building some stuff. And he has lots of great things about Trump. He also believes Trump is kind of a moron in general sense. But he does think that, the things he did for businesses, things he did for building, he got that big ice rink built when no one could get it done. And now it's one of the biggest attractions in the city, if not in the state of New York City, going out down there. So that big ice rink people skate on every single year and you see all the movies being done out there. He did that. He also, raised rents on people who were poor and did stuff like that too, and didn't pay a lot of folks. Though he did do that stuff as well. But he did get stuff done. Donald Trump Jr. saying because Donald Trump, the father, was such a great person, he brought up great property values and brought great things to New York. And of course, also as the president. You would say that because he's Donald Trump Jr. Let's move on to story number 4 this week. Keke Palmer's accuses ex-boyfriend Darius Jackson of abuse. Judge grants temporary restraining order. We did not cover this one very much in the actual daily shows, but this was one that got a lot of attention in the news, and we're getting a lot of attention in stories like this. They're not going away. So you guys voted this one up as the number 4 story in your engagement. She accused her ex-boyfriend of physical and emotional abuse, was granted a sole custody of their 8-month-old son, Leo, no visitation for Jackson. Of course, Palmer's real name is Lauren Kiana Palmer, full actual birth name. Said her 2-year relationship with Jackson was abusive. She said she's now even more unhinged, violated, and dangerous. He is now more unhinged, volatile, and dangerous, and she fears for her and her son's safety, essentially saying physical abuse, chokes, and body slams, things like that. Love bombing her with all sorts of great emotional feelings, but in the turn, turning violent and turning emotionally unstable in the case. This one, of course, will play out in the court of public opinion because we do this stuff. You voted this number 4, by the way, for the week. We'll see how this plays out going forward. Let's go to story number 3 this week, and this was a big one. NFL reporter Charissa Thompson admits she used to make up fake sideline reports. Now, she says used to, which means that she doesn't do it anymore, or at least she's not admitting to it anymore. But what she is actually admitting to is earlier in her days on Fox Sports and now Amazon Prime, working the game on Thursday Night Football. She, back in the day, had to make up stuff because the coaches won't come out at halftime, or it was too late to really get stuff from them. So she needed a report to give in the spots. It's part of the TV deal. It's part of the reality of doing TV and trying to make this things a living story. Is that the sideline reporters are just sort of bringing in color to what's going on, bringing in things to enhance the show. In this case, or in her cases, there were times earlier in her career, and other reporters have actually admitted it as well, that they've made stuff up because they didn't have time to get some from the coach, or the coach told them something that didn't really play well to the story, or team was probably really losing really bad and he wanted to say something that wasn't just the coach sucks, so they went with something that was a bit more peppy and cheerful. She admits to this one. She didn't want to get the coach mad by saying things that hurt them or basically lose access. So many times in the early days when she didn't have the clout, basically she just went with something that would work for the show. She says she doesn't do that anymore. She doesn't have to. She has the clout, if you will. She has the gas to do what she needs to do. And the coaches are more amenable to actually come out and talk to her and say what they want to say because they know she will get the right word out, or the word out as best as possible, and not just sabotage them in the process. They're happy for that. She's happy for that. Many people are not happy because it's one more thing to throw at Charissa Thompson because people seem to hate her as a sideline reporter. The number 2 story for this week has this headline: a volcano in southwestern Iceland is expected to erupt in the next few days. We posted this story on Monday, the 13th to be exact. And the story was basically a week old by then because there was all sort of issues with the volcano and them being worried about it there. By Monday, they shut down the famous Blue Lagoon in Iceland because they expected, this volcano to erupt within the next couple of days. As far as I can tell, the volcano has not erupted, but there have been, thousands of mini earthquakes that are basically threatening the people that live in the towns nearby. One big one called Grignovich, which had 3,300 residents, was evacuated immediately, and I don't think they're still back. There are essentially pools of lava just rolling under the volcano there, not quite erupting yet, but just, little pockets of little lava flows going through, causing the earthquakes because it's stretching the ground, making it unstable. The earthquakes will eventually unmask and unlure the actual volcano they expect, and we'll see what damage will come from that. Earthquakes are one big issue. Volcanoes a total other thing. So we're all just looking forward to this happen. As far as I can tell, and I have been, out of pocket in a couple places, the actual volcano has not yet erupted, but they are still dealing with the pockets of lava and the earthquakes in the land of ice. And finally, we take a quick pause, just a quick pause, to go through the numbers, the stats for the number 1 story of this week. And we do this to give some color to what we're giving, give some perspective of how we got to where we got to. This story right here is the number 1 story this week. It's the number 1 story by Twitter, X, because that usually drives things. Oh, by the way, the top story in Facebook this week was the story on the Marvels not doing so well, just for your color on that one. But this story got 27.38% of all the engagement all week long. So of the 215 stories this week, this story got 27% of all the engagement. This story is more engaging than the story we just did on Volcano by 351%. Let's get that one right, definitely. And more engaging than the story at the very bottom of this week, as I said, number 215. That story is down by 931,900%. That's how much more engaging this one is than that one you didn't care about. What is the headline for the story, you may ask? Well, I will tell you. You don't have to ask because I'm going to give it to you. The headline for that story, and don't be surprised because it's them people again. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce plan to spend more time together during her 2-month Eras Tour hiatus. You didn't think we'd get away without Taylor Swift this week, did you? You did not think we'd actually do that, did you? There's no way we're not getting away out of this thing without Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce because they are it. Source told AT, that's Entertainment Tonight, that Taylor and Travis had a great time together in Argentina, planning to spend more time together during their 2-month break. So what's happening, the Karma Tour is going to take a break in a bit. And so that's 2 months of leaving the South American leg in Buenos Aires and all the beautiful cities down there, and going and have some time together, just kind of hang out. Now, Travis Kelce actually has some work to do, and if all works out well, he's working into the middle of February because that means he's in the Super Bowl. But when Taylor Swift gets some time off in her tour and Travis gets a little breaks here or there, they will spend more time together, just blushing, looking cute, all sweet and dapper. It looks like Taylor has found her forever friend, and we are very happy with that because Us football guys love us and Travis Kelsey. He's just a fun guy to, it seems like a fun guy to be. Don't really know him, but seems like a fun guy. Seems like he's pretty popular. People seem to like him. So we want the best for both Taylor and Kelsey. We want the best. We want the story to never end. We want endless amounts of content, even if it's silly, sweet, saccharine stuff like Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift smooching on the beach. It's what we want. So if you guys want more of it, keep voting it up because apparently that's what you guys are voting up. So, the top story of the week is not necessarily the biggest story for you guys. We do something called the story of the week, and that's another podcast where we take one of the top 10 stories and we expound on it to give you some extra commentary so I can kind of work that magic. This week, we do that by taking the stories in the order that they were voted on, then rearranging the order of the articles or the titles, and then battling the titles back and forth to get the best one that makes the most sense, something that you guys will probably get into. And this week, our top story in that battle turned out to be the story at number 9, believe it or not, with Marianne Williamson still in the presidential race. The number 2 story, the runner-up story in that battle, is number 6 story this week, and that is the Marvels and it not making any money. Now, the Marvels angle is going to be the fact that people are kind of getting tired of the Marvel, the whole sort of platform, and why the movie franchise that was basically printing money is now losing money. For Marianne Williamson, we're going to go bigger, deeper. I was working on a bigger video that I was going to call literally Trump versus Biden 2 Electric Boogaloo, but I don't think that's going to pan out for time wise. But we'll do a little talking, chatting with the podcast version, just the voice, on Marianne Williamson, Doug, I would say Doug Flutie, the Doug guy who's running against President Biden, who no one cares about because, cares. Doug. Dean Phillips, that's the guy. And Doug Burgum is the Republican that nobody cares about. It gets confusing. We're going to talk about a bunch of folks who still have no chance. They're still trying to run for president on both the Republican side, the Democrat side, and some third-party folks who are maybe taking some votes away from one of the other two. We'll see how that plays out, but that's what we'll focus on the Story of the Week podcast. Look for that in a separate feed wherever your pods are cast, or go to our website. This is a Conversation Project.com, and you can find where you can link directly to that. We're on Spreaker. That's basically where our home is, so look for it there as well. And with that, we're going to take an actual pause for a moment to take some commercial time and some promotion time. More explanation on how the feeds work and how we work, and a big talk up to a sponsor to keep things going here. We are the Conversation Project, and we have this thing called the Weekly Wrap Up. We're doing it right now. This is the wrap up for the week ending November 18th, 2023, and we'll be right back. And we're right back with this headline that is an advertisement for Zenni Optical. Zenni Optical is a great place to get your glasses. Your next new pair of glasses should probably come from Zenni Optical because they will have probably the least expensive glasses out there are offered by Zenni Optical. And they're very inexpensive, but they're also very great. Zenni Optical has glasses that'll take care of men, women, and children, all ages, all sizes, all frames, all styles, great frames, and great lenses. These aren't cheap glasses. I've been using Zenni Optical for over a decade because they have been taking care of me with extremely inexpensive glasses. As a person who tends to lose glasses, it's always good to have spare pairs of glasses. And the frames I'm wearing right now are the frames I've been wearing basically for the last 8 years or so. The same frames have changed things up. I got a little tint, if you're watching the video, into these glasses that help me read things on the screen a little bit better and deal with the lights that are in the studio. But other than that, I've been buying the same inexpensive glasses with great frames and great technology for a long time. And I can buy as many as I need to, as I said, because I lose them. My daughter has her glasses from Zenni. She didn't really need glasses, but since, she had an eye exam and she wanted them, they were inexpensive, she can get some glasses and kind of get going with that one. I basically tell all my friends and family to check them out because these are the best people to get your glasses from because they're inexpensive. You don't have to pay $100 just to send glasses back. Just buy the glasses you want, and if you don't want them, send them back. It's that simple. You go to our link at our website. This is our affiliate link so that we can get a little bit of commission from Zenni Optical. This is a conversationproject.com/Zenni. This is a conversationproject.com/Zenni. This is a conversationproject.com/ZENNI for Zenni Optical. You're going to find your next beautiful pair of glasses from Zenni Optical. I'm pretty sure about that. Check it out. And as I said, use our link from our website. It's an affiliate that allows us to get a little bit back and helps keep things going on here for the Conversation Project. We thank you for checking out all our sponsors. Go to thisistheconversationproject.com/sponsors for more of our list of sponsors. But check out Zany Optical this week because Christmas is coming and you might have that new pair of glasses, by Christmas party to match that ugly sweater. The Conversation Project lives online at thisistheconversationproject.com. This is our online home. This is our website. This is where we store our stuff, if you will. If you want to know more about what we do, go to the website and there's details on how this project has gone along for over a decade. This was originally set up as basically a daily survey site that did not pan out. And then I merged it with some other news things I was doing. I was working in a news at the time. This turned into my news headline, my newsletter website, and then it turned into the video thing in the last year or so. We have exploded in the last year since we began this journey in January of 2023 to really push on with the videos. We're glad, or actually 2022. I'm sorry, we've been doing it 2022, and then going through 2023 as we've evolved and got things better. So going on 2 years of more or less this sort of format, and we thank you so much for being with us. We recently hit for the YouTube looks, over 200,000 of actual views. We were glad about that, and over 800 actual subscribers to the channel after being sort of a half-dead thing for forever. We thank you for helping us hit that and want you to help us get to more. Now, how you do that? Very simply, you first give us the words to talk about for these programs. Go to our feeds on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/This is a Conversation Project and twitter.com/th_conversation or x.com/th_conversation. And every 50 minutes or so, we post news headlines, news articles, news links for you to engage in. The higher the engagement get, that's how we got the top 10 stories, the more chance we have to talk about that story for the week, just like that. We also have drops inside of various things, including TikTok and YouTube Shorts, which allows you to see quick hits, 60-second drops of news stories. Check those out, reply to those as well, and email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. You do that, and you let me know exactly what to do better things. If you want to be a deeper, more involved patron of our work, stop by our partnerships page at our website and join up as a partner. Partners get a greater insight to what we're doing every single day, and obviously they get hands-on touching of what's happening. So if you want to be more in control of what you're seeing here every single day, and every day we do produce articles for you here for the Conversation Project, consider being a partner. We appreciate all the love, all the help, and what's really important is the free stuff. Go to the feeds and send us emails. That's the simple free stuff. Do that, and we will figure out how to keep things going. We'll be just fine. Thank you. Back to the news, back to the headlines, back to the stories. We are now going through the almost rants, the numbers 11 through 15 stories that were close, but not quite top 10 materials, and not by much. The margin between the middle top 10 and the 15, not that big. The number one story, oh, that's huge. But everything else, these stories could easily have been in the top 10 with a couple different responses, different people checking here or there. So they weren't very, very, very close. Let's start off the story at number 11. Pedro Pascal no longer returning to The Mandalorian season 4. So is there a Mandalorian without any Mando? We will see what happens, as the season 3 felt like it was a trilogy season that wrapped things up, ending up with with Moff Gideon being gone, being killed off, and of course Pedro Pascal or Din Djarin becoming the sheriff of the planet, going on to be there because he didn't want to go on to the new restored Mandalore. He was not that Mandalorian. It was all going to be up to the other Mandalorians to live the life. It was going to be just Din and of course Grogu living the life on the planet, doing what they're going to do. We will see what happens in the 4th season, as the 4th season essentially is basically there. We actually may see Din Djarin join in for more Star Wars related stuff, as he's not an original character from the actual series or from the actual expanded series, but since people love him, he may join in that fight going forward. And now that he's sort of aligned himself with some of the rebels, or soon to be rebels, if you will, we will see how that plays out. But no, excuse me, no Pedro Pascal expected for the return of Mandalorian. Also, apparently no Pedro Pascal for the return of Last of Us as well. That's something we didn't actually post here, but something I've seen in some trades that going forward. So maybe he's moving on. He can do that. His prerogative. At number 12, Jeff Bezos' Lauren Sanchez engagement party was a star-studded affair in Beverly Hills. We posted this story off of USA Today because, to be honest, I was kind of in a dry spot and needed some things to fill some gaps. And so we just posted about Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's engagement party, even though I thought they were already engaged. Of course, they've been calling each other fiance for a while, so and you know how people do that stuff. So they haven't actually announced, when they're going to get married or where it's going to be, but it's there. And they do actually live in, well, they lived in, I guess, Bezos still technically lived up in the Northwest, but he's moving to Florida because he wants to be closer to his parents and Cape Canaveral, where Blue Origin is doing their space flights. But we'll see what happens going forward, where they will actually live. I mean, he's a billionaire. They can live in their space rocket, I guess, if that's what they really want to do. Rich people, I guess. At number 13, Kel Mitchell was shopping. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to hit the headline. Headlines actually. Kel Mitchell drove himself to hospital in panic after he suddenly lost ability to swallow. He was shopping, just out shopping, and he took ill, was worried he was dehydrated, could not swallow, and he drove himself to hospital. Found out he had a bulging disc, something that was brought up by a previous injury and was pressing up against a nerve that mimicked the symptoms that he was basically choking and couldn't swallow. He was treated. He went home. He's was convalescing very well and being just resting up and doing fine within a couple of days. A lot of people are happy to hear that. Now, Kel Mitchell is going through a lot right now, although some good things popping up with the new Good Burger movie coming out and having some more of a positive impact, positive things come out in the media, but he is still dealing with his family issues, his divorce, things like that. So we're wishing well wishes on him to get through with his health and, yes, with his sanity on the back end, and that all parties in the disputes will find a way to find some semblance of normalcy. And number 14, Caitlin Armstrong found guilty in 2022 shooting death of cyclist Anna Maria Wilson. Pulling this from the Statesman, one of Texas's local papers, their website edition, of course. Caitlin Armstrong found guilty of the murder of cyclist Anna Mo Wilson back in 2022. Family Wilson's victim cried after the verdict. Armstrong did not show any emotion during the entire trial. During the trial, prosecutors said that DNA evidence pointed to Armstrong as the person who killed Wilson, while defense attorneys said there could have been other suspects, even though the DNA kind of pointed to Armstrong being the person who killed Wilson. They said that they suggested that Wilson transferred Armstrong's DNA to her bicycle. That did not make sense, and that if she transferred someone else's DNA to her bike, it would have made more sense if it had been someone else. Basically, the DNA kind of did it. Also, there's GPS data, a whole lot of things going on. They had a lot of science to back this up for their probable cause, and they found her being Armstrong, guilty of killing Wilson from this actual case. And at number 15, Becky Lynch makes history for her terrible performance on Celebrity Jeopardy. I posted this one once again because I needed something in there, and it just seemed like it wouldn't get very much attention. It got a lot of attention. It got more attention than I thought it would have, and it should have been actually covered in the Friday edition of Things You Might Have Heard if I knew people would care that much about it coming through this way, if I actually paid attention to the numbers based on what we picked. But what happened was Becky Lynch got 0 answers correct in Celebrity Jeopardy. None. Not a single answer. In 60 clues for the entire game, she actually did not get there. She basically finally gave a correct answer in Final Jeopardy, but literally in the 60 questions in the actual game period, she couldn't get a single question right. She is literally the worst person in Jeopardy, at least Celebrity Jeopardy history, going forward. Side note on this one, there was also an article on one episode of Celebrity Jeopardy where no one could guess who wrote Friends in No Places, which is basically being called a crime that no one can find anyone's music anymore because of streaming services and people not being there. Of course, Garth Brooks' music is famously not on many streaming services, so people who listen to Friends in No Places in like my day on CDs back in high school, way back when, can't find the old stuff, and now it's old stuff. And so these youngins can't find the music of our youth, which is why their music is so bad, maybe. Very, very odd side note, but there you go. Quick pause to remind you, because we're about to tell you about to wrap up the show and give you the last story, the almost relevant story of the week, that we are located online at thisistheconversationproject.com. And we have a website that tells you what to do about what to do. Go to information on our feeds, information about our sponsors, partnerships page, and where you can find us all over the place. You can email us anytime you want to at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. That way you can tell us what stories are more relevant, what stories were less relevant, what things we can do to improve and make things better, and what things we can do to make things less worse. Sometimes about being less worse than more better. The feeds, of course, as we say often, facebook.com/this is a conversation project and twitter.com/th_conversation. It is extremely important that you visit those feeds because that's how we get our news stories to talk about every single day. We can't talk about the stories you don't tell us to talk about. It's all about that. And now, the story at the very bottom of this week. Number 215, the headline is "The Price of Oil Soars and Thieves Go After Century-Old Trees in the Mediterranean." So how much does a Grecian earn? Not very much these days if they're selling olive oil, because Athens, essentially the hotbed of olive oil production for authentic Greece olive production, I should say, is being ravaged by thieves who are literally cutting, not only just stealing oil outright, but using chainsaws to steal large branches and even entire trees to plant someplace else and grow their own olives and make their own olive oil. Most thieves are just out there for the branches. Some are just literally digging up trees, and it's just a big old mess for folks going on. So essentially, when you're done with the olives and whatever, you can chop the trees up and sell it for firewood. So you get away with the crime, literally. But it's just become a very, very big thing. Also having issues with prices in Spain and Greece and Italy being about $4.35 per pound of extra virgin olive oil. It says per pound. I don't know, do you measure that in pounds? So that's how the robot editor gave it to me. So olive oil, if you're cooking with it a lot, I don't cook with a lot of olive oil these days because it is kind of expensive, and I haven't been doing any real fancy stuff, trying to get back to the real house and whatnot. But olive oil is really expensive. The good stuff is the good stuff, the EEVOO that Rachel Ray would tell you to get. But as a crime ring, olives, this story may not be one of the more relevant ones, but if you are a cook, then I think you probably love this one. In the meantime, we are cooked because we are done. This has been the end of the broadcast of the weekly wrap up for the week ending November 18th, 2023. Thank you so much for being a part of the show with us for this week. Some things to kind of tell you for next week. Next week is the week of Thanksgiving, or American Thanksgiving for you folks not in America. So we're pretending on doing all 5 days of shows because I actually have some time off from the job and can do a little extra work behind the scenes here. And we do intend to have maybe a little bit of a special edition of the weekly wrap up. We may do some holiday things popping up there for things popping up if we can work it out there. And we're also doing some preparation for talking about election stuff for the Conversation Project. So that may sneak in there as well, as we're basically rolling into the season there. But we intend to be here this week, so that means you need to keep on going to the feeds every single day so that you can give us stories. Definitely for this weekend, so we have a great showing on Monday, that being 2 days from now, as this was released on Saturday, for the Monday edition of Things You Might Have Heard, and whatever happens for the weekly wrap-up. What will be the top story in the weekly wrap-up, and what story will we pull from that top 10 list to give you for the story of the week? Story of the week coming down the pipe in about an hour or so. The weekly wrap-up coming down next week. You let us know with your engagement all week long which stories are the tops, and we'll make it happen. Thank you so much.